Hi there, this is Jennifer and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I have a video just sharing some ideas for creating texture on your cards, specifically on die cuts, but these could be used on other elements of your cards too. These different techniques are pretty basic and pretty simple to do, but the best part about it is that you can incorporate different products that you have together to get new looks, and that's something that I'm always trying to do. I did do a lot of layering on today's cards because I'm making 4 extra special cards for 4 extra special people, but keep in mind you can do these with many less layers if you wanted to. Let's get started with this example here. With this, I'm adding texture to my die cuts by making an impression with another die. I have some tips for this that I think might be helpful to you. You can see the texture from the impression on the diamonds in the background of this card. For this, I used a new Altenew die set called Fine Frames Diamonds Dies. Now these cut the diamonds and also a thin frame around them, which I think is really neat for adding special details. I'm also using the Spellbinders Platinum 6, which is my favorite manual die cut machine. You could use any machine you may have for this technique, you just need to follow the instructions in the manual. For this machine, you can see the instructions are on the platform there, and I'm actually going to follow the instructions for this technique instead of doing my own thing, which I'll show you later. That means I have my platform, and then I have my die cut, which is that paper there, the paper diamond, then this diamond die that I'm going to make an impression with. I'm taping it in place, and I'll lay this down upside down on the platform. On top of that, I'm putting my Spellbinders Embossing Mat. This is a flexible mat that allows you to make an impression with a die instead of cutting with it. You can even use this mat with other machines. Okay, so now on top of this, I will put my embossing plate because that's what the instructions on the machine say to do. I'm going to run this back and forth, and what's happening is the die is pressing into my die cut because we use that embossing mat. And check out that cool textured look that we get. Now you can do this with many different dies on any cardstock that you have, so you could create backgrounds, whatever you want. I just wanted to do this today to add texture to my die cuts instead of leaving them plain. I'll go ahead and create another here, but I wanted to mention what I normally do to make impressions with a die. What I normally do is I put my embossing mat directly onto the platform, then I put my paper, then the die facing down, then the embossing plate, and I run it back and forth. And I find I get the same results as I'm doing here. I just wanted to mention that in case you saw me do different in other videos. Okay, so I created several of these die cuts with the impression, and then I did a bunch of extra die cuts that are just flat. I'm gluing 3 plain die cuts on top of each other, and then 1 of the textured die cuts on top of that. This is just going to give me extra dimension and make that die cut look more like an embellishment instead of just a plain die cut. Okay, I have one more impression to make for this card, and it's a large diamond in the background behind the leaves. I die cut a larger diamond, and I'm taking 2 of the smaller diamond dies, and I'm going to tape them right in the center. Now remember, these dies cut a thin frame, so this will make an impression of a double line frame, which is really cool. But think about all the stacking dies that you may have. You can make impressions of smaller shapes on a bigger die cut. It's just a good way to stretch your supplies and get a different look for your cards. And I really like how this adds that texture, and it's easy to do. Next, I'm going to create the background. You can see the dots on the background. I am crazy about this look. This is the new Altenew Dotted Starburst Debossing die. This die doesn't cut anything. Instead, it just pierces a bunch of dots that form a pattern that is super cool, and we'll actually use it to create texture on die cuts later in this video. For this card, I'm just using it with some craft paper and running it through my die cut machine. You use this as you would any other die. Just like the others, it just pierces instead of cutting, and look at that really cool pattern. By the way, that piece of cardstock was 4 by 5 1/4. And now I'm gluing it onto a top folding white note card, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I'm now gluing my layered die cuts onto the background. The nice thing about this background that we debossed is it has a center point. So I'm using that center point to help me get these die cuts centered on the card. You could draw pencil lines to figure it out, but I think eyeballing it works just fine. Once I have the 4 smaller diamonds glued to my background, I'm taking a frame that I created from that same die. Remember how the diamond dies create a frame too? And I'm gluing the frame around the main die cut. Now this takes a few extra minutes and I could have just created a mat, but it looks really cool that it has a frame around it. You can see it in real life better. And I just cut it from a darker piece of cardstock and I have the center left over for a card I'll do later on. Once I have the frames glued around it, I'm just going to trim the excess off by flipping the card over. And by the way, I just ran liquid adhesive around those main dies to put the adhesive down to put the frame in place. Now we have our large diamond that I'm going to glue right on the top. And then I have a white frame to go along with that. I just used the same die, and I'll glue that around it. This just helps these to stand out a bit more. So I know I'm adding a lot of detail here and a lot of layering. You could definitely skip any of the steps that you want. But again, I wanted to make this card extra special and something that the person could keep. I wanted to create a sentiment that would stand out against all of the layering we have, so I decided to use the new Altenew Fancy For You die. Really like the style of this and how it fits on a card. I die cut it twice from white cardstock and then once from this Memory Box Delicate Pastel glitter paper. I'm really liking this glitter paper because there's a bunch of different soft pastel colors in it, and I chose the white glitter paper from it. So I have 2 white cardstock die cuts I'm gluing together, and then on top of that I'm doing the white glitter die cut. This is a very easy way to add texture to your die cuts. Using glitter paper that doesn't rub off, has a nice texture to it, and catches the eye. Off screen, I created a bunch of layered leaf die cuts using the new Altenew Open Blooms 3D die set, which I'm going to show you on the next card. So I have a few of these layered leaves, and I'm just arranging them in the background. They look kind of funny how I've arranged them there in the center, but I'm going to put the die cut over it, so it'll look okay in the end. I just want to have some green that peeks out and some behind the die cut too. Once I have the leaves glued in place, I can go ahead and add our layered die cut. One of the advantages of layering up a word die cut like this is it's normally pretty fragile because it's so delicate, but by layering die cuts together, it's more sturdy and will hold up nicely. I also used that debossing background die on the flap of my envelope. Isn't that cool? It's a great way to make the envelope match your card. All I did was open up the envelope flap, put the debossing die on it, and run it through my die cut machine. Here's the completed card. I did add a few Trinity Stamps golden baubles, which are like gold pearls that are fun accents. So you can see all the layering that we did and the texture that we added to our die cuts using glitter paper, impressions of other dies, and the debossing plate. Now look at the different dies that you may have. You may have circle dies that you can use to create a background like this, or square dies. I thought the diamond pattern was unique and fun, and I was excited to use it today. You could also use a bunch of different die cuts behind the For You, such as hearts or flowers or stars even. Okay, my next example shows how to add texture to your die cuts or your background using a stencil. Let's start with that frame in the center. This is from the Altenew Nesting Frames die set. These dies are a little different than the diamonds. These cut the shape and then do a little embossed line right inside of the cut line. I like that added detail. I die cut one of these from one of the larger nesting frames, and now I'm taping it to the center of the new Altenew hand-drawn tile stencil. Any stencil works for this technique. This is a great way to get more out of your stencils. Now we're going to make an impression with the stencil on our cardstock. To do this, I have my platform. Then I like to use a metal adapter plate. You could skip that if you want to, but I find that shim helps to give a better impression. Then I have my embossing mat like before. Then the paper, the stencil, and then the embossing plate on top. Again, you could do this with any die cut machine you have. You just follow the instructions for making an impression with the die, but use a stencil instead. And I do think that shim helps. And check out the results. You get a soft, smooth impression that I think is really beautiful and a great way to use your stencils. Let's do another. This one will be for the background. This time I decided to add even more shim. So I have 2 pieces of cardstock here that I'll be able to reuse later. And then I'm adding my metal adapter plate. If you don't have a metal adapter plate, you could use a couple more sheets of cardstock as a shim. Then we have our embossing mat, a piece of cardstock. I have some craft cardstock and another stencil. This is from Altenew also, and I thought it's such a cool look and great for this technique. I like to tape the stencil in place so it doesn't shift, and then we will put our embossing plate on top. Now this is going to apply a lot of pressure to it, but that will allow it to make a deeper impression. You could skip those shims if you wanted to. Just try it and see what works for you. One thing I wanted to mention is when you do this technique, your cardstock will want to stick to the embossing mat. Just peel it off, it'll be fine. And check out the cool impression that you can get. I thought these layered together nicely. Now it's time to create our floral die cut that'll go in the center of this card. These are the dies that I used earlier for the leaves. This is the new Altenew Open Blooms 3D die set. I like layering die sets like this because it's a great way to use up scraps that you have. You can even use inked scraps that you have or even pattern paper. So you can create many cards from the one die set and lots of scraps. Today I used some coral color scraps and I die cut the pieces according to the instructions that come with the package. It's very easy to figure out how to layer these, and I just use liquid adhesive, but you could use stick-it adhesive or spray adhesive, whatever is best for you. I just find that liquid adhesive I don't go through as much, so I tend to reach for that the most. Okay, so after I have my pieces glued together, check out this beautiful layered flower. I just think it's gorgeous, and you can do it in a variety of colors. You could even cut out all the layers from white cardstock and color each of the different die cuts to create a colorful layered flower. Okay, so I also did the layering with the leaves, and now we have these beautiful elements to create the focal point on our card. So I glued those pieces that we created before onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. And I also have my leaves and flowers that I arrange exactly how I wanted them. Now I'm putting liquid adhesive on the back of them. You can see how a little goes a long way with liquid adhesive if it's a strong type. I'll glue this right in the center of my card. And now all I need to do is add my sentiment. Now for a sentiment, I decided to use the Altenew Fancy Thanks die, which I have used many times in videos. I die cut 2 from white cardstock and glued them together, and 1 from white glitter paper like I did on my last card and glued that on top. And then I glued all of that on top of our layered flower. I also added a few silver baubles from Trinity stamps as accent. So here you can see the fun texture that we have on these die cuts. 1, because we made an impression with the stencil. 2, because we used a layering die set. And 3, we used the glitter paper on our sentiment, which really helps it to stand out. Now, this one is one that I would mail in a padded envelope, but I'm okay doing that because I feel like it protects the card we spent a lot of time on, and the padded envelope can be reused. Okay, my third card shows how you can use debossing dies to add texture to your die cuts. I showed some of this before, but I wanted to talk about it a bit more, and you can see that detail on the white squares. For these squares, you could definitely use a square die or cut your own with a trimmer, but I decided to use the Altenew Fine Frames square dies because it creates that thin frame also. After cutting some white squares from these, I'm going to use that debossing die that we used earlier, but I want to make a deeper piercing. So I'll pause it here. I have my platform, a metal shim, my cutting plate, the debossing die, and I'm going to lay one of my squares onto the portion that I want to use. I'll then put a cutting plate on top, run it through, and we have that pierced pattern on our die cut. Debossing dies like this are becoming a little more popular. Altenew has a few of them. I really like them, and I hope to see more in the market because it's a great way to add texture to a background, but as you see here, you can add texture to die cuts too. Okay, so I have my textured squares here, and I did add a few plain die cuts behind them for dimension. I have a piece of craft cardstock that is 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm just arranging these die cuts on here. For the focal point of this card, I decided to use an older die set. This I used in a video before also. This is the Altenew Palm die set. I just think they're beautiful dies that can be used for a variety of different cards. I die cut 2 of the larger palms from green cardstock, and I'm going to add that on top of our squares. but I thought it'd be fun to add some of the frames around those white squares. Remember that die creates the frame? So I'm running my adhesive around it and then dropping a blue frame around the square die cuts. You could definitely have just cut squares and then matted them on blue cardstock. But I like that this this die set creates the frames because it gives a nice finished look, and you can use that center square for another project, so you can get a lot more out of it. Next, I'm adding my palm die cuts, and I'm using liquid adhesive behind these, and then they'll just kind of stretch over all the layering we already have. If you put something heavy on it afterwards or press your hand on it, you can be sure that it does glue to all the different layers and it'll stay there nicely. Again, I'm using the fancy 4U die, but this time I'm cutting off the word for, so I just have the word U. This is another great way to stretch your sentiment dies. So let's look at the completed card because it's pretty easy to finish from here on. I have a gold U die cut that I stacked some white cardstock die cuts behind. I white heat embossed thankful for ahead of that, so I have a new sentiment that says thankful for you. You can see the detail in those squares. Isn't that piercing gorgeous? So it could have been left just plain, or you could use embossing folders or make impressions with dies on those squares. I just like that the piercing doesn't add too much dimension, but it adds a lot of detail. By the way, the Thankful for You is from this Altenew Needlework Motif stamp set, which you can tell I have used an awful lot. Okay, it's time for my last example. For this one, I did scoring on the background, but first I wanted to show you how I did piercing on my layered die cuts, and it gives such a cool look. I'm laying the different die cut layers from the Open Blooms die set right onto that debossing background die that I've used a few times in this video. After I've put as many die cuts as I can fit on it, I'll put the cutting plate on top and run it through, and it'll put that textured pattern into all of my die cuts. I then will assemble the die cuts as I did before, and I'll end up with a layered flower with all that little detail, which I think is such a fun look. Okay, next let's create our background. You can see how the diamonds have those scored lines on them. This is another great way to use your products creatively. Here I have my Scor Buddy scoring board, and I'm using a stylus just to make lines onto the edge of my diamond die cuts. So I like to use a stylus for this because it really gets into the nooks and crannies of this and really makes a deeper impression, but you can use a bone folder if that's what you have. I'm just lining up the edge of the diamond with one of the lines in the scoreboard and then making my scored line. You can see I go back and forth to make a deep impression. I've done many videos showing how you can make patterns with scoring, and I'll link to one of those here. It's a nice way to use your products to get new looks. And if you don't have a scoreboard, many trimmers have a little ledge that you can use as a little scoring line, and you can do this technique that way. Another fun thing about doing this is you can use the front or the back of the die cut. Both look good. You can also do this as a frame around a background. Okay, so for our card, I used the debossing die on white cardstock, and I'm going to glue that to the front of a white note card. I just wanted to have a little detail behind all of our diamonds, and this debossing die was perfect for it. Now, following the pattern of our background, because it allows me to center these, I'm going to glue my diamonds down, just gluing them directly onto the background. Now, I'm not measuring this out. It doesn't have to be just right. You just want to eyeball it. And I'll cover the front of our card with the diamonds. And I want to leave a little bit of a white gap between each so that you can see the debossing that we did on the background. Once I have some hanging off, I like to trim off the edge so that I can use those extra little pieces to fill in the rest of the pattern. By the way, this is a fun technique to do with square dies, and you can turn them so they look kind of like diamonds too. Okay, let's look at the completed card. I assembled the little flower and leaves using the die cuts that we added that texture to, and I put that in the bottom right corner of the card. I then used the Altenew Fancy Hello die. I die cut that twice from white cardstock, once from a pastel pink glitter paper from what I showed you earlier, glued that on top, and you can see how that ties in nicely with our pink flower. There's a lot of texture to this card. We have our glitter paper, the piercing that we did on our flowers, the scoring we did on the diamonds. You could skip a lot of these steps, but I think together they really create something special. One other thing that you can do to add texture to your die cuts that I didn't share today but wanted to mention is use embossing folders. You can put your die cuts in an embossing folder, run it through, and then your die cut will have great texture. I hope you'll try some of these simple ways to add a little interest to your die cuts. It's really fun to do and a great way to stretch your products. If you're interested in seeing what I used in this video, I do link it all below in my YouTube description. And here in the middle, I have a couple other videos related to this that you might find helpful. I appreciate the time that you spent with me today. I hope your week is wonderful, and I'll see you again with another video soon.